Hi, I'm Andy with EcoCha, and here we are with batch number 18 of the EcoCha Tea Club. And this month we have a batch of Longan wood charcoal roasted Wuyi Oolong that was cultivated in the historical tea growing region of Songbolin in Nantou County. And Songbolin has been growing and producing tea for many decades and used to commonly grow this heirloom strain from mainland China, known as Wuyi Oolong, from the Wuyi Shan or the Wuyi Mountain tea growing region. In Songbolin here in Taiwan, this tea type got phased out with the introduction of hybrid teas that produce more volume per bush and as a result per acre. And our friend who lives in Songbolin, whose family has a heritage of growing and producing tea, decided that he wanted to plant a plot of Wuyi Oolong to represent his local tradition. So he planted a small area of Wuyi Oolong and decided he would also cultivate it completely naturally. So this crop of tea has been cultivated for about 3 years now, with no use of chemical fertilizers or pesticides whatsoever. And this batch of tea was, the leaves were inspected after they were harvested and processed, and the results showed ND, which is non-detectable trace chemical elements. So a totally naturally cultivated crop of traditional Wuyi Oolong that was then processed in a traditional way, in that it was significantly oxidized, probably even more than, let's say, a standard Dongding Oolong, so that it could undergo extensive roasting, which was his intent. He prepared these leaves for the charcoal roasting process by roasting them twice in the conventional modern tea ovens at low temperature, and then handed them over to an elderly, skilled artisan of charcoal roasting, you might say, a man in his late 60s who has been doing this all his life, and that's all he does is roast tea leaves using Longan wood charcoal. And in Taiwan, charcoal roasted tea typically means a very well roasted tea, probably on par with Tie Guanyin from Muzha in Taipei in the north. So it's one of the most well-roasted tea types available on the market here, and it's making a comeback. It's now being produced and promoted as a Taiwan traditional specialty, since there is a heritage here of that. These more traditional types of teas that are more heavily oxidized and roasted or even heavily roasted got phased out with the generation of high mountain tea, as it's known in Taiwan here, which is a green oolong, so to speak, in that it's not roasted at all and relatively lightly oxidized. And this type of green oolong is still comparatively more popular and produced much more, at least in terms of volume. But we here at EcoCha make a point of seeking out and sharing what we find to be local specialties, and particularly when they reflect traditional knowledge and skill, which this tea definitely does. So not only is it an heirloom strain that was phased out in order to maximize production in the modern tea industry, and now we know of 2 farmers in this, actually 3 in this area of Songbolin, who have small plots of Wuyi Oolong, and they're producing some very interesting batches of tea. We actually shared the first harvest from this plot of tea in last March, I believe, with our EcoCha Tea Club, and that was left green. So it was produced in the style of high mountain tea with a little more oxidation level. And that kind of, well, it was the fresh new crop from these very young leaves, and our friend, given the amount of tea also that was produced, very small, the leaves were still, the trees were still probably about half mature, so they were still quite small. The trees this year are about twice the size they were last year when we shared that first batch, and he purposely processed both last spring and last winter's harvest in preparation to combine them together as a heavily oxidized tea base in order to be able to be roasted to this extent. So what's special about Wuyi Oolong? It's just a flavor profile that comes from these leaves that makes it distinct. In my experience, it's similar to the Tiaguanyin Oolong plant. It just has another element of its own flavor character. You might call it tangy, you might call it a particular aromatic quality that comes out. It's hard to put my finger on it. But compared to the Qingxing Oolong, which is the most commonly known oolong for high quality or specialty teas here, there's just something else to it, and it's really interesting to have a chance to get to know it just in recent years here. And the roasting, that Wuyi character comes out. To me, it's a tanginess, or it's not sour, but it's not really sweet either. It's this fruity tang, in addition to a very solid, rich, balanced character. And then combined with the highly skilled, in my perception, roasting effect, which is a caramelized, kind of a preserved fruit or a caramelized nutty flavor. There's just so much there. When it hits your palate, it's one thing, and then after the tea is swallowed, this very bold aftertaste in the nose. I'd say the most obvious aspect of this character of the tea is the balance between a sweetness and the obvious roasted flavor that comes out. It's not burnt at all, but you just get something like smokiness in there, even similar to sweet potatoes on an open fire, that kind of smokiness, but really rich sweetness there too. So as a type of tea in comparison to others, I'd put this in between traditionally made Dongding Oolong and a traditional Muzha Tiaguanyin, and then add to that the distinct quality that comes from the Wuyi tea plant. We find it quite distinct, and in addition to the deliciousness of the tea itself, we feel very excited to have gotten the chance to procure not only the first harvest of this newly planted plot of Wuyi Oolong in Songbolin County as a representative of a type of renaissance, but also now our friend is really working these leaves, you might say, to bring them to their fullest potential. So there we have it, traditionally made Longan charcoal wood roasted Wuyi Oolong from Songbolin County. It's a really distinct profile of flavor, and if you like roasted tea, I'm pretty sure you're going to really appreciate this batch. We'd love to hear your comments. Please post them in our EcoCha Tea Club webpage. Share your photos of you brewing this tea, or even make your own tasting video like I am here. We'd love to see what you think and how you go about appreciating this tea. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next month.